Star Trek Enterprise improved enormously in its third season with the introduction of the Xindi arc, and it hit its stride in the fourth season. Unfortunately, Enterprise was cancelled just as it was getting good and really becoming the prequel it was meant to be. And to make matters worse, it ended on a very sour note. Its finale was written by series creators Rick Berman and Brannon Braga, and it was called These Are The Voyages. Cool name. Crap episode. It was designed to be a valentine to all the other Trek shows and the fans, a way to celebrate 18 years of continuous Star Trek on television by bringing it all back to TNG. The episode is largely considered by fans to be one of the worst of the franchise. So, what went wrong? On paper, it seemed like a cool concept. Given that holodeck technology exists in the 24th century, it creates an opportunity to link Enterprise, based in the 22nd century, and one of the future Trek series together in a way that's not some convoluted time travel story. Continuity can still be maintained, and I think it's a clever idea, actually. This kind of story could have been done in numerous different ways. This could have been a TNG, DS9, or Voyager crossover with Enterprise, but they chose TNG to serve as the framing of the episode, and that's fine. The trouble is, TNG ended in 1994, and the actors had aged obviously 11 years at that point. Jonathan Frakes and Marina Sirtis, who guest star in the episode, were in their 50s, but playing younger versions of their characters in their 30s. Though they had aged quite gracefully and they could still pull it off, it doesn't really work that well. Ideally, they should have been playing their characters in their latter years, during their tenure on the Enterprise E, or during a post-Nemesis phase on the USS Titan, as Riker had been given command of that ship at the end of Nemesis. Also, because this kind of episode would understandably cause the regular Enterprise cast to be slightly overshadowed by the TNG cast members, ideally this should not have served as a finale. The final episode of Enterprise should have been solely about the Enterprise characters, and not holodeck versions of them. This kind of historical holodeck story should have been a mid-season Enterprise episode. However, much of these issues I could have forgiven if it was not for one unbelievably stupid decision: the killing off of a beloved character, Charles Trip Tucker. He's killed off in the episode in the most contrived, meaningless, and unnecessary manner. More as a stunt in the episode, actually. His sacrifice to save his friend Captain Archer is inserted in order to create some emotional moment that doesn't in any way pay off or feel relevant to the story. It's even more forced than the arbitrary death of Data at the end of Nemesis, and it's a complete disservice to the character. He isn't even given a funeral or memorial service by the other characters in order to appropriately mourn his passing. There are a few positives I can highlight in this episode, but they're mostly production related. This is the first time we see the Enterprise D since its destruction in Star Trek Generations, as this episode is based during the 7th season of TNG, specifically during the episode The Pegasus. Not a particularly remarkable episode to base a story around, I might add. Anyway, the Enterprise D is stunningly recreated in CG, and the model is just gorgeous. In addition, several of the Enterprise D sets are recreated in exacting detail, and so everything about the TNG-based scenes feels authentic. The corridor section, a piece of the 10 Forward Lounge, Troy's quarters, and the holodeck set all had to be rebuilt from scratch. But apparently the observation lounge was a fold and hold set that had been kept in storage since its usage as the Enterprise E observation lounge in Star Trek Nemesis and Star Trek First Contact. It was, of course, originally used in Star Trek The Next Generation. If you look very carefully, you can see the vertical lines on one of the doors, which were a feature of the Enterprise E and not the Enterprise D. But it's a very minor detail. And also, in the original Pegasus episode, Troy's hairstyle is completely different, and she's clearly wearing a uniform that's blue. But in These Are The Voyages, she's wearing a uniform that's more of a green colour. Also, the wrong turbolift set is used, but I'm nitpicking here. These are minor complaints. Regardless, the setting is otherwise perfect, and it feels like a genuinely lost episode of TNG. It was a real novelty to see TNG characters in uniform interacting on the NX-01 sets, and it felt like a decent blending of the two different eras. But the central story about how Riker is seeking some kind of inspiration and insights from the final mission of Archer's crew in order to help him make a big decision is just not strong enough. It's also not consistent with the original Pegasus story. At the end of These Are The Voyages, the holographic Trip character helps Riker decide to speak to Captain Picard about what really happened during the USS Pegasus mission and the secret cloaking device experiments. He's filled with a conviction to finally come forward to tell his captain everything.
I think I'm ready to talk to Captain Picard. I should have done it a long time ago.
So I guess we're through here.
But in the original Pegasus episode, Riker only admits to everything when he's left with no choice. He only reveals that Admiral Pressman has a cloaking device under guard in his quarters as a means of helping the Enterprise D escape from a Romulan vessel, because if this particular cloaking device was installed on the Enterprise D, it would allow the ship to pass through solid matter and exit the asteroid that they're stranded inside.
Captain, I have a suggestion. There's a piece of equipment in Admiral Pressman's quarters under guard that might get us out of here. It's a prototype for a Federation cloaking device.
So he doesn't decide to reveal the truth to Captain Picard out of some renewed sense of ethics or duty and obligation to his captain. He does it somewhat reluctantly as a last-ditch solution to help the Enterprise escape. So that is a bit of a continuity error. Now, above all else, where this episode really falls down is that it's just simply not a good send-off to the Enterprise series cast. A big deal is made about Archer's signing of the Federation Charter and his big speech that he's due to give at the ceremony, but we end up seeing neither on screen, making the whole thing a massive anticlimax. The best we get is the beginning of the ceremony scene, with CGI Archer walking really far away in the distance. Though I will admit, the final sequence where the voices of Picard, Kirk and Archer can be heard saying the famous Space the Final Frontier speech over shots of the three iconic Enterprise starships is a sweet little moment for fans. Using the holodeck as a means of connecting the past and present of the Trek franchise and uniting two series together for a major crossover moment is certainly a clever storytelling device that could have worked very well as a mid-season episode of Enterprise, but not as a series finale, like I said earlier. There's nothing satisfactory about These Are The Voyages, and I really wasn't happy with how Trip and T'Pol's relationship was handled in this episode. The fact that they had broken up sometime during the past 6 years was really disappointing, given all the fantastic development these two characters had together on the show. In my opinion, the entire episode ends up being about as hollow as the holographic recreations of the Enterprise crew. I prefer to think of the two previous episodes, Demons and Terra Prime, as a more suitable series finale for the show. It's a more heroic story for this crew, and Terra Prime gives several of the characters some poignant moments and/or story arc resolutions. It's a shame that Enterprise didn't end on a stronger note, especially given how much the show had improved in its third and fourth seasons. Jolene Blalock called These Are The Voyages appalling. At VegasCon in 2014, Brannon Braga said, "The final episode of Enterprise was an idiotic move on my part. I thought it would be cool to do a Valentine to all of Star Trek. To me, there was something really postmodern about the idea of saying this was an episode of Next Generation you have never seen, where they go to the holodeck with their heroes aboard Enterprise. It sounded good in my head. What ended up airing was really bad and not successful completely. It should have been Enterprise's finale. It was a misstep." He would go on to say, "The Enterprise actors, they hated it. It was the only time Scott Bakula got pissed off at me." I have a lot of admiration for Brannon Braga as a writer, and I appreciate his honesty here. And I have to commend both he and Rick Berman for realizing that this episode was a mistake. In a StarTrek.com interview in 2011, Rick Berman said, "I would have never done it if I had known how people were going to react." He went on to say, "This idea, which Brannon and I came up with, and I take full responsibility, pissed a lot of people off, and we certainly didn't mean it to. It seemed like a great idea. A lot of people were furious about it. The actors, most of them, were very unhappy. In retrospect, it was a bad idea. When it was conceived, it was with our heart completely in the right place. We wanted to pay the greatest homage and honour to the characters of Enterprise that we possibly could, but because Jonathan and Marina were the two people we brought in, and they were the ones looking back, it was perceived of as, you're ending our series with a TNG episode. I understand how people felt that way. Too many people felt that way for them to be wrong. Brannon and I felt terrible that we'd let a lot of people down. It backfired. Our hearts were definitely in the right place, it just was not accepted in the way we thought it would be. I have a lot of respect for Rick Berman for saying that. Anyway guys, that concludes my video on the final episode of Star Trek Enterprise, These Are The Voyages. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Be sure to subscribe for more, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye.